The first sound was not a scream. It was a breath. A shallow, uneven breath pulled through clenched teeth, recorded unintentionally on an old cassette tape found years later in a parish archive. When the tape was analyzed, audio engineers noted something unsettling. The breath did not follow a human rhythm. There was a pause between inhalation and exhalation that stretched too long, as if the lungs had forgotten what they were meant to do. That tape was labeled only with a date and a name. Father Daniel Klein. According to church records, the events that led to that recording began quietly, without spectacle, in a rural parish that rarely saw outsiders. No one there would have imagined that a single case, one family, one house, one priest, would permanently alter a man who had served the church for nearly 20 years without incident. Father Klein was known for his restraint. He did not believe easily. He discouraged superstition. He referred most claims of spiritual disturbance to medical professionals, and he did so with patience rather than ridicule. Witnesses described him as calm, analytical, and deeply uncomfortable with dramatized faith. He preferred prayer over performance, silence over spectacle. That would change. The parish of St. Augustine sat several miles from the nearest town, surrounded by farmland and low woodland. Fewer than 300 families attended regular services. The church itself was old but well-maintained, its stones darkened by weather rather than neglect. Father Klein had arrived there in the early 1990s, transferred from a larger diocese after requesting a quieter assignment. For years, nothing unusual occurred. Then in late autumn, the Morrison family requested a meeting. They were not frequent churchgoers. Their attendance had been irregular for decades, and Father Klein knew them only in passing. Thomas Morrison worked maintenance at a grain facility. His wife, Elaine, volunteered at the local library. Their daughter, Sarah, was 17 years old. It was Sarah who prompted the meeting. According to Father Klein's written statement, the parents appeared exhausted. Elaine's hands shook as she spoke. Thomas avoided eye contact entirely. They did not ask for an exorcism. They did not use the word possessed. They asked for advice. Their daughter, they said, had changed. At first, the changes were subtle. Sarah had become withdrawn. She stopped spending time with friends. She locked her bedroom door, something she had never done before. Her grades fell sharply, and teachers reported long periods of staring during class. These symptoms were not unusual for adolescents. Father Klein said as much. Then came the sleepwalking. Elaine described waking in the early hours to find Sarah standing at the foot of her bed, completely still, eyes open but unfocused. When Elaine spoke her name, Sarah did not respond. When touched, she flinched violently, as if shocked, and returned to her room without a word. Medical evaluation was sought. Doctors found no neurological abnormalities. Sleep studies produced inconclusive results. Medication was prescribed for anxiety and insomnia. The medication did nothing. Over the following weeks, Sarah began speaking in her sleep. At first, it was incoherent murmuring. Then phrases began to emerge. Repetitive sentences spoken in a low, flat tone. Elaine wrote some of them down, uncertain why she felt compelled to. I am not where I was born. This place is thin. You should not hear me yet. Father Klein read those notes during the meeting. He later wrote that he felt a brief sense of unease, but dismissed it immediately. Language can be deceptive, he reminded himself. Fear reshapes memory. He advised continued medical treatment and recommended a family counselor. He offered prayer, which the parents accepted. The prayer ended without incident. 2 nights later, Thomas Morrison woke to the sound of something heavy moving across the floor above him. He assumed Sarah was pacing, perhaps unable to sleep. He did not investigate until the sound stopped abruptly, replaced by silence, so complete it felt artificial. When he opened her bedroom door, he found the room empty. The window was open. Sarah was standing barefoot in the backyard, facing the tree line. According to Thomas's account, she did not respond when he called her name. He approached slowly, speaking softly. When he placed a hand on her shoulder, she spoke without turning around. I was listening. Her voice did not sound like her own. It was deeper, but not in a strained way. It was calm, deliberate, as though each word had been selected carefully before being released. Listening to what Thomas asked, she tilted her head slightly, as if considering the question. Something older than this place. Elaine called emergency services. Sarah resisted when they tried to guide her inside, not with violence, but with immovable stillness. It took 3 adults to bring her back into the house. At the hospital, she remembered nothing. That was the point at which Father Klein was contacted again. This time, his response was different. He visited the Morrison home in the early afternoon. Sunlight filled the rooms. The house was clean, unremarkable, filled with family photographs and ordinary clutter. There was nothing oppressive about it. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, pale but composed. She answered questions politely. She apologized for frightening her parents. She attributed her behavior to stress and poor sleep. Father Klein spoke with her alone for nearly an hour. He later wrote that the conversation was normal in every measurable way. Sarah expressed confusion, frustration, and fear. She denied hearing voices. She denied experiencing any unusual sensations. She asked repeatedly if she was going crazy. At the end of the visit, Father Klein saw no spiritual cause for alarm. That evening, he recorded a brief note in his journal. Family distressed. Daughter exhibits dissociative episodes. No evidence of spiritual interference. Continue observation. The journal entry ends there. What he did not write about was the moment just before he left. As he stood in the doorway, Sarah looked up from her chair. Her parents were in the living room, distracted. The house was quiet.
"Father," she said.
He turned. Her eyes were fixed on him, unblinking. "You should not come back alone." He paused, then smiled gently, assuming anxiety had shaped the comment. "I'm not afraid," he said. Her expression did not change. "I know," she replied. That night, Father Klein dreamed of the church basement. In the dream, he was standing at the bottom of the stairs, holding a candle. The light did not reach the corners of the room. He could hear breathing behind him, but when he turned, nothing was there. He woke just before dawn with a sense of pressure in his chest, as though something had been sitting on him while he slept. Over the next week, the Morrison household deteriorated rapidly. Sarah stopped sleeping entirely. She began refusing food, claiming it made her nauseous. Her speech slowed. She often paused mid-sentence, staring at nothing for several seconds before continuing as if no interruption had occurred. Elaine reported hearing Sarah speaking in the bathroom late at night, her voice carrying through the walls. When Elaine asked who she was talking to, Sarah answered, "I'm not talking. I'm answering." Medical professionals escalated their response. Sarah was admitted briefly for observation. Psychological evaluations suggested dissociative disorder with possible psychotic features. Antipsychotic medication was introduced. Within 48 hours, Sarah attempted to tear out an 4 line using her teeth. She was released into her parents' care with instructions to monitor closely. It was Elaine who called the parish again, her voice barely controlled. "She knows things," Elaine said. "Things she shouldn't." Father Klein listened as Elaine described a conversation that had taken place that morning. Sarah had asked about a miscarriage Elaine had suffered years before her birth. A pregnancy no one had spoken about. No records existed in the house. Elaine had never told her daughter. When Elaine demanded to know how she knew, Sarah responded with a simple statement. "You were not alone when it happened." Father Klein requested another visit. This time, he did not go unprepared. He brought with him a small vial of holy water, a rosary, and a copy of the Roman ritual. He did not inform the family of these items. He told himself they were precautionary, symbolic rather than necessary. The visit began normally. Sarah was in her room, sitting on the bed with her hands folded in her lap. The curtains were drawn despite the daylight outside. The air felt stale, though no windows were closed. Father Klein greeted her. She returned a greeting. He began asking questions unrelated to her condition.
School. Books.
Music. Her answers were brief, but appropriate. Then, without warning, she asked him a question of her own. "Do you still believe doubt is a virtue?" The phrasing caught him off guard. "I believe discernment is," he said. She nodded slowly. "Discernment requires distance." "What do you mean?" he asked. She looked past him, toward the corner of the room. "Too close, and you confuse your voice with another." Father Klein felt a tightening in his stomach. He removed the vial of holy water from his pocket and unscrewed the cap. He did not tell her what he was doing. He dipped his fingers into the water and made the sign of the cross on her forehead. The reaction was immediate. Sarah gasped sharply and recoiled as if struck. Her hands flew to her face. She slid backward across the bed until her back hit the wall. Her breathing became rapid, shallow. "It burns," she said. Her voice had changed. It was not louder or deeper. It was flatter, stripped of inflection. Each word emerged with mechanical precision. Father Klein stepped back. "It's only water," he said, though he knew that was not entirely true. Her eyes locked onto his. "You changed it." He did not respond. She began to smile. The smile was wrong. It did not involve the eyes. It stretched too slowly, as though the muscles of her face were unfamiliar with the expression. "You carry doubt like a shield," she said. "But shields fail when you stop holding them." Elaine entered the room at the sound of raised voices. The moment she crossed the threshold, Sarah screamed. It was a sustained, inhuman sound that seemed to tear itself from her throat without breath. Elaine froze. Thomas appeared behind her, his face draining of color. Father Klein ordered them out of the room. Sarah convulsed on the bed, her limbs jerking violently. Her mouth moved as if forming words, but no sound emerged. Then, abruptly, she went still. Her eyes closed. When she opened them again, she was crying. She did not remember what had happened. Father Klein left the house shaken. That night, he contacted the diocesan office. He did not request authorization for an exorcism. Not yet. He requested guidance. The response came 2 days later. According to protocol, medical explanations had not yet been exhausted. Psychological treatment was ongoing. Spiritual intervention beyond prayer was not recommended. Father Klein complied.
Publicly.
Privately, he began researching. He reviewed old case files stored in the church basement. Most involved misdiagnosed mental illness. A few were inconclusive. One, dated decades earlier, ended abruptly with a note indicating the assigned priest had requested reassignment and never returned to parish duty. Father Klein read that file twice. The symptoms were not identical, but the language used by witnesses felt uncomfortably familiar. He began visiting the Morrison home regularly, always during the day, always with another parish member present. He prayed silently.
He observed.
Sarah's condition worsened. She began responding to prayers spoken in Latin, completing phrases before they were finished. She identified religious objects hidden in closed drawers. She recoiled from the church itself, refusing to cross the threshold. On one occasion, as Father Klein stood outside the front door with her parents, Sarah pressed her forehead against the glass from inside and whispered something too softly to hear. When Father Klein leaned closer, she spoke clearly. "You're being watched more closely now." That was the night he stopped sleeping. According to his later testimony, he would lie awake for hours, listening to the sounds of the rectory settling around him. Footsteps that stopped when he sat up. Murmurs that vanished when he turned on the light. He began finding dirt beneath his fingernails in the morning, though he had not left the building. On the 7th night, he woke to find his bedroom door open. He was certain he had closed it. On the floor, just inside the threshold, lay his rosary. The crucifix was warm to the touch. He did not hesitate after that. Father Daniel Klein formally requested permission to perform the rite of exorcism. The request was granted with restrictions. Observation only. Preliminary prayers. No full ritual without further approval. The date was set. The location was not the Morrison home. It would take place in the church's auxiliary building, a small structure used for storage and counseling sessions. Neutral ground. Controlled environment. 3 witnesses were required. 2 were selected from the parish council. 1 was a medical professional. Sarah was brought in just after sunset. She walked willingly. As she crossed the threshold, she stopped. Her hand tightened around the doorframe. "I don't like this place," she said quietly. Father Klein stood a few feet away, vestments folded over his arm. "It's safe," he replied. She looked at him for a long moment. "Nothing is," she said, and stepped inside. The door closed behind her with a sound that echoed longer than it should have. The auxiliary building smelled of old paper and dust. The lights hummed faintly overhead, casting a sterile glow that flattened shadows, but did not erase them. Folding chairs had been arranged in a rough semicircle around a narrow wooden table. A single crucifix lay on its surface, unadorned, its edges worn smooth by years of handling. Sarah sat in one of the chairs, her hands resting calmly on her knees. She appeared smaller than she had in the Morrison home, as if the space itself diminished her presence. Her eyes moved slowly, cataloging the room with quiet interest. The witnesses arrived one by one. Margaret Ellis, a parish council member in her late 50s, took a seat near the door. She clutched her purse tightly, knuckles pale. Beside her sat Raymond Holt, another council member, younger, visibly skeptical, his jaw set in a way that suggested discomfort rather than disbelief. The medical observer, Dr. Alan Reeves, stood near the wall, clipboard tucked under his arm. He had reviewed Sarah's file extensively and had agreed to attend with professional detachment. He had also insisted on the presence of emergency medication, which rested in a small case at his feet. Father Klein entered last. He wore simple vestments, no embellishments. His movements were deliberate, controlled. He set his ritual book on the table, but did not open it. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence pressed inward, thick and expectant. Father Klein began with prayer, his voice low and steady. He chose familiar words, spoken in English, careful not to provoke. The witnesses followed along silently. Dr. Reeves observed Sarah closely, noting her posture, her breathing, the lack of visible reaction. At first, nothing happened. Sarah stared at the floor, her expression neutral. As the prayer continued, Father Klein shifted into Latin, reciting a passage meant to invoke protection rather than confrontation. His pronunciation was precise, practiced over years. Sarah's head lifted. Her eyes focused on him with sudden intensity. She did not interrupt. When he finished the verse, she spoke. "That language feels like a door," she said. Father Klein paused. "How so?" he asked, keeping his tone even. "It opens the wrong way," she replied. Margaret Ellis inhaled sharply. Raymond Holt shifted in his chair. Dr. Reeves made a note. Father Klein resumed, this time sprinkling holy water lightly on the floor between them. The droplets darkened the wood, absorbed quickly. Sarah's foot twitched. She drew it back slightly, as if avoiding contact. Father Klein noticed. He stepped closer. "I ask you," he said, "to tell me what you're feeling." She considered this. "It's loud," she said. "Not like sound, like pressure." "Where?" he asked. She touched her chest, then her throat.
"Here."
"And here." He nodded. The preliminary prayers continued for nearly 20 minutes. Sarah's responses remained controlled, articulate. She showed signs of discomfort but not distress. Dr. Reeves's notes reflected this. Elevated heart rate, shallow breathing, but no loss of consciousness, no involuntary movements. Then Father Klein opened the ritual book. The sound of the pages turning was soft, but Sarah flinched. Her hands tightened into fists. "You don't need that," she said. "I do," Father Klein replied. He began the prayer of supplication, a formal request for divine assistance. The words were ancient, their cadence unchanged for centuries. Sarah's breathing quickened. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, shoulders hunched. Her voice, when she spoke, layered itself over his words without raising in volume. "You're asking permission," she said, "from something that isn't listening." Father Klein continued. The temperature in the room dropped. It was subtle at first, noticeable only as a chill creeping along the skin. Margaret Ellis rubbed her arms. Raymond Holt glanced toward the thermostat mounted on the wall. It remained unchanged. Dr. Reeves felt it too. Sarah began to tremble. Her teeth chattered softly, though her breath did not fog. Her eyes remained fixed on Father Klein, unblinking. "Stop," she said quietly. Father Klein did not. The crucifix on the table slid an inch to the left. No one touched it. The sound it made, a faint scrape against wood, cut through the prayer. Father Klein stopped speaking. Silence fell again, heavier than before. Dr. Reeves took a step forward. "Father," he said, "we may need to." Sarah laughed. It was a single sound, abrupt and humorless. "That doesn't belong to you," she said, nodding toward the crucifix. Father Klein raised his hand, signaling Dr. Reeves to remain back. He addressed Sarah directly. "I am speaking to you," he said. "Sarah Morrison." Her smile returned, slow and deliberate. "That name still fits," she said. "For now." Margaret Ellis stood up. "I don't like this," she whispered. Father Klein did not turn. He continued the ritual, his voice firmer now, each word articulated with intent. Sarah's body stiffened. Her back arched, pressing against the chair. Her head tilted at an unnatural angle, chin lifted, exposing her throat. Her voice changed again. This time, it carried a resonance that filled the room without increasing volume. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating in the air rather than traveling through it. "You speak as if you are alone," the voice said. "You are not." Father Klein felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. He gripped the edge of the table to steady himself. The lights flickered. Once.
Twice.
Then stabilized. Dr. Reeves moved closer, concern evident now. "Father, her vitals." "Be silent," the voice said. Dr. Reeves froze. His mouth opened, but no sound emerged. His face flushed as he struggled to breathe. Sarah's eyes were no longer focused on Father Klein. They were focused on Dr. Reeves. "You observe," the voice continued. "You measure. You label. You do not listen." Dr. Reeves collapsed to his knees, gasping. Father Klein broke from the ritual. "In the name of..." The voice cut him off. "No names," it said. "Not yet." Sarah's body convulsed. The chair tipped backward, crashing to the floor. She did not fall with it. She remained rigid, suspended for a fraction of a second before landing flat on her back. Margaret Ellis screamed. Raymond Holt rushed forward, but stopped short as Sarah's head snapped to the side, her gaze locking onto him.
"Do not," the voice said.
Raymond froze mid-step. Father Klein regained his footing. He raised the crucifix. "In the name of God, I command you." The temperature dropped sharply. Breath fogged in the air. The crucifix grew heavy in his hand, its weight pulling downward as if resisting being raised. Sarah sat up. Her movements were smooth, controlled, entirely disconnected from the chaos around her. She placed her palms flat on the floor and rose to her feet. Her eyes met Father Klein's. "You doubt," she said. "Even now." "I do not," he replied, though his voice trembled. "You do," the voice corrected gently. "You doubt because you see what doubt protects you from." She took a step toward him. Dr. Reeves regained his breath and scrambled backward, pressing himself against the wall. Margaret Ellis wept openly now, her hands clasped over her mouth. Raymond Holt whispered prayers under his breath, words tumbling over each other. Father Klein resumed the ritual, skipping ahead, his voice rising. Sarah screamed. The sound was not loud. It was piercing. It cut through bone, through thought, through prayer. Father Klein felt blood trickle from his nose. The lights shattered. Glass rained down, scattering across the floor. Darkness swallowed the room, broken only by the emergency lights flickering weakly. In the dim red glow, Sarah's silhouette loomed. Her limbs bent at angles that defied anatomy. Her head twisted slowly, as if something inside was testing the limits of the body it occupied. "You are not ready," the voice said. "You never were." Father Klein fell to his knees. He pressed the crucifix to his chest and whispered a prayer, words spilling out without structure or ceremony. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Sarah screamed again. This time, the sound broke. It fractured into layers, high, low, overlapping, each one carrying a different tone of anguish. Her body collapsed. She hit the floor hard, limbs slack, breath ragged. The room fell silent. Emergency lights steadied. Dr. Reeves rushed forward, checking her pulse, her breathing. "She's alive," he said shakily. "Unconscious." Father Klein remained on his knees, shaking. Margaret Ellis and Raymond Holt stood frozen, unable to move. After several minutes, Sarah stirred. Her eyes fluttered open. She looked around, confused. "Why is it dark?" she asked weakly. Father Klein did not answer. He stared at her, his face pale, his eyes hollow. The session was terminated immediately. Sarah was taken to the hospital under heavy sedation. Dr. Reeves accompanied her, his professional detachment shattered. Margaret Ellis never returned to parish duties. Raymond Holt resigned from the council within a week. Father Klein filed a report with the diocese. He requested immediate authorization for a full exorcism. The response was delayed. In the meantime, Sarah's condition worsened. She began speaking in a whisper, even when shouting. Her voice carried a rasp, as if her throat had been damaged. She refused food entirely, surviving on intravenous fluids. She drew symbols on the walls of her hospital room with her fingernails, scratching until they bled. The symbols were erased repeatedly, but she recreated them each time with unsettling precision. Father Klein visited daily. He prayed outside her room when he was not permitted inside. He spoke with her doctors, who could offer no explanation for her rapid deterioration. At night, he dreamed of the auxiliary building. He dreamed of standing alone in the dark, holding a crucifix that grew heavier with each step he took. He dreamed of whispers crawling along the walls, speaking his name with intimate familiarity. He began to question everything: his faith, his calling, his own mind. When authorization finally came, it was conditional. A senior priest would oversee the ritual. Observers would be present. Documentation would be thorough. The exorcism would proceed. Father Klein read the letter 3 times. He felt no relief, only dread. The date was set. The location was the church itself. On the morning of the ritual, Father Klein arrived early. The nave was empty, pews silent witnesses to centuries of prayer. Candles flickered along the altar, their flames steady despite the absence of drafts. He knelt. He prayed for strength. He prayed for forgiveness. He prayed for doubt to leave him. Behind him, somewhere in the darkened church, something moved. Not a sound, a presence. He did not turn around. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the core, that whatever had entered Sarah Morrison had not been contained. It had followed him home. It had been listening. And it was waiting. The senior priest arrived just before noon. His name was Father Matthias Rourke. He was older than Father Klein by nearly 20 years, his hair completely gray, his posture rigid with discipline rather than age. He had served as an exorcist intermittently for the diocese, though his official records were sparse. Much of his work, it was later learned, had never been formally documented. He greeted Father Klein with a firm handshake and a searching look that lingered a second too long. "You look unwell," Father Rourke said. "I haven't been sleeping," Father Klein replied. Father Rourke nodded, as if that answer confirmed something he already suspected. Sarah was brought into the church through a side entrance to avoid attention. She was restrained lightly, not because she resisted, but because her body no longer seemed to respond reliably to her own intentions. Her movements were slow, delayed, as though commands from her mind reached her muscles late. Her eyes were open. They tracked everything. As she was guided toward the front pews, her head turned slightly toward the confessional. She smiled. Father Klein followed her gaze and felt his stomach tighten. The church had been prepared carefully. Candles placed at measured intervals. Holy water blessed that morning. The ritual texts laid out in precise order. The atmosphere was controlled, reverent, disciplined. Nothing was left to chance. Father Rourke took command immediately. His voice carried authority without force. He instructed the witnesses, 2 priests from neighboring parishes and 1 diocesan recorder, to remain silent unless addressed directly. Dr. Reeves was present again, though he stood farther back this time, his face drawn, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Sarah was seated in a sturdy wooden chair bolted to the floor. She did not struggle. She leaned back, relaxed, as if settling in for a long conversation. Father Rourke began with the litany of the saints. The response echoed through the empty nave, voices rising and falling in solemn rhythm. Father Klein joined in, though his throat felt tight, his mouth dry. Sarah listened. Her eyes drifted closed. At first, nothing happened. Minutes passed. Then her fingers twitched. Her lips parted slightly, though no sound emerged. As the prayers intensified, shifting from supplication to command, her breathing grew labored. Her chest rose and fell unevenly. A faint sound escaped her throat, a low hum, barely audible. Father Rourke raised his hand, signaling a pause. He stepped closer to Sarah. "Who are you?" he asked calmly. Her eyes opened. They were bloodshot, the whites tinged with red. "I am what remains," she said. The voice was layered again, though subtler than before. It did not shout. It did not threaten. It spoke as if stating a fact. "You are not welcome here," Father Rourke said. "I was invited," the voice replied. "By fear. By silence. By doubt." Father Klein felt the words strike him with physical force. Father Rourke continued, "In the name of God, I command you to identify yourself." Sarah's head tilted. "You already know," the voice said. "You've read the words. You've traced the patterns. You understand enough to be afraid." Father Rourke did not react. "Then you understand this as well," he said, and began the formal rite. The Latin flowed steadily, unwavering. Each phrase landed with deliberate weight. Sarah's body stiffened. Her feet pressed against the floor, heels digging in as if resisting an unseen pull. Her hands curled into claws, nails biting into her palms. She began to whisper. At first, it was unintelligible, a stream of syllables that did not belong to any living language. The sound crawled along the stone walls, echoing back distorted and wrong. The candles flickered. One by one, their flames bent inward, leaning towards Sarah as if drawn by gravity. Father Klein's heart pounded. He felt pressure building behind his eyes, a dull ache that pulsed in time with the whispered words. Father Rourke raised the crucifix high. "Be silent," he commanded. Sarah laughed. This time, the sound carried warmth. Familiarity. "Still pretending this is about names," the voice said. "You should know better." Her head snapped forward. She looked directly at Father Klein. "You brought me closer," she said. "You opened the door wider each time you returned." Father Klein staggered back a step. Father Rourke turned sharply. "Do not listen," he said. "It lies." "It doesn't need to," the voice replied. Not to him. The church doors slammed shut. The sound thundered through the nave, reverberating in the bones. One of the observing priests gasped. Dr. Reeves took a step forward, then stopped, his face pale. Father Rourke resumed the rite, his voice louder now, filling the space. Sarah screamed. Her body strained against the restraints, muscles bulging, tendons standing out starkly beneath her skin. The chair groaned but held. Her scream did not fade. It stretched. It deepened. Then, abruptly, it cut off. The silence that followed was suffocating. Sarah slumped forward, head hanging limply. For a moment, Father Klein felt a surge of hope. Then she lifted her head slowly. Her eyes rolled back, showing only white. Her mouth opened. Another voice spoke. This one was quiet, intimate. "You remember the first body you blessed," it said. Father Klein froze. "You remember how small she was, how cold." His breath caught in his chest. The memories surged unbidden. His first funeral as a newly ordained priest. A stillborn infant. A grief-stricken mother. His hands shaking as he performed the rites. "You wondered," the voice continued, "why prayer didn't save her." "No," Father Klein whispered. "You wondered," it insisted. "And that wonder never left you." Father Rourke stepped between them. "Enough," he said. "You will not speak to him." Sarah's head turned sharply. Her eyes snapped forward. For the first time, anger flashed across her face. Father Rourke pressed the crucifix toward her. "In the name of God, I cast you out." The temperature plummeted. Frost crept across the stone floor, thin and white, spreading outward from the chair. Sarah screamed again. This time, the sound was layered with words, dozens of voices overlapping, crying out in different languages, different tones. Father Klein dropped to his knees. He pressed his hands to his ears, but the sound was inside him now, vibrating through bone and thought. Father Rourke continued, unflinching. The crucifix grew hot in his hand, metal biting into flesh. Blood trickled down his palm, dripping onto the stone. Sarah's body convulsed violently. The restraints snapped. Wood splintered. She lurched forward, collapsing onto the floor, writhing, limbs flailing. The candles went out. Total darkness swallowed the church. In the blackness, something moved. Not Sarah. Something else. Father Klein felt it pass behind him, close enough that the air shifted. He smelled earth and rot, and something metallic. A whisper brushed his ear. "You could have walked away."
He sobbed.
Father Rourke shouted the final command, his voice raw, strained. A force like a sudden wind slammed through the nave. Father Klein was thrown backward, hitting the pews hard. Pain exploded through his spine. The sound that followed was indescribable. Not a scream, not a roar. It was like something tearing itself free, ripping through layers of reality with violent resistance. Then, silence. The emergency lights flickered on. The church was in ruins. Pews overturned. Candlesticks scattered. The altar cracked down the center. Sarah lay motionless at the foot of the altar. Dr. Reeves rushed forward.
"She's breathing," he said.
Weak but stable. Father Rourke collapsed to his knees, bloodied, exhausted. Father Klein struggled to his feet. He approached Sarah slowly. Her eyes were closed. Her face was peaceful. He knelt beside her and whispered her name. She stirred. Her eyes opened. They were clear. She looked at him with confusion, then fear. "Father," she whispered, "why am I here?" Tears streamed down his face.
"It's over," he said.
Sarah frowned. "No," she said softly. His heart stopped. She turned her head slightly, gazing past him toward the darkened back of the church. "It's gone," she continued. But it didn't leave alone. Father Klein turned. The shadows at the far end of the nave seemed deeper than they should have been, pooling unnaturally between the pillars. Father Rourke struggled to stand. "It's done," he said hoarsely. "She's free." Sarah shook her head weakly. "It let go," she said. "That's different." Father Klein felt something shift inside him. A cold certainty. Sarah was taken to the hospital and, over the following weeks, recovered fully. Her doctors documented a sudden remission of all symptoms. No psychological explanation was ever found. She never spoke of the voices again. She left town with her parents shortly after her discharge. Father Rourke resigned from diocesan service within a month. He never performed another exorcism. Father Klein remained. Outwardly, he returned to his duties. Services resumed. Repairs were made. Life continued. But something in him had changed. Witnesses later reported that he no longer prayed aloud at night, that he avoided the church after sunset, that he flinched at sudden sounds. He requested a transfer. It was denied. The cassette tape was recorded 6 months later. In it, Father Klein speaks quietly, almost to himself. "There are doors," he says, "and there are things that wait for us to open them." A pause. A breath. "I don't think I closed mine." The tape ends there. Father Daniel Klein was found dead in the rectory 2 years later. No cause was determined. The church sealed the auxiliary building permanently. According to maintenance records, something continues to move inside it at night. No one has gone in to check.